Morning all, let's have a look at round 10 clash between Netherlands and Armenia. On board 1 you have the very strong young super GM Anish Giri, 2711 FIDE rated, 2711, but against the top seed Levon Aronian playing black, 2816. Levon overall has had a fantastic rating performance, believe it or not, above his rating last time I checked. And okay, playing black after d4, he chooses the rock solid Slav defense, very popular at the moment. It doesn't hem in this bishop. That's one of the kind of evolutions over a standard queen's gambit declined. Okay, knight f3, knight f6, and now queen b3, immediately putting pressure on b7 and d5. Looks a little bit of an odd move in some respects, ruling out some possibilities like b3 and bishop b2 maybe later, blocking in that b pawn. But this pressure is annoying to black, and it stops of course the bishop coming out that easily, so the bishop gets locked in for the moment. But it's not a permanent prison, as long as maybe black can liberate with e5 later. So okay, g3 fianchettoing here. And there's another point, of course, that any takes on c4 can be answered with the queen here. So this bishop is not needed to support c4. It can fianchetto. So bishop g2, and now both sides castle. Knight bd7, and it looks solid. It looks as though this triangle in the center is just a very popular setup. So bishop f4. And now a5, which gives some possibilities for black, like a4 at the right moment, or even just a hook on the b4 square could be useful later. It doesn't severely compromise black's position. It doesn't create too many exploitable weaknesses. Rook fc1. Okay, you might think that's a little bit odd, but white's got to be actually a little bit careful about this bishop in this variation. It would seem it's quite easy to lose this bishop. If he plays like knight d2, knight h5 might be troublesome. So I think he's careful to not use at least the d2 square. Knight c3 would seem an idea as well. Rook c1, no, okay, is played. h6, and it looks as though, yes, g5 at the right moment tactically is a resource which in theory it can be useful in some points, but h6 has got its other uses as well, making space for the king in the end games. So a4. Now knight e4 is very interesting. Okay, it's improving this piece, and you might think, well, what is really the idea here? White plays now knight fd2 to safely challenge that knight. Let's say that the knight was challenged with knight 1 to d2. Is there a tactical issue emerging here to check out? Or even knight c3. If knight bd2, okay, maybe black can just take, and it seems okay. Bishop g5 is a resource. It's interesting. It's okay for white anyway. No, nothing special so far. In fact, knight fd2, okay, is played, and the knight retreats to d6. And this bishop is really often a problem piece in this structure, and maybe Anish decides he wants for a quick e4 to be played here without the hassle of this bishop in some of these variations. And also there might be the possibility of knight f5 putting pressure on d4, which would be awkward, because then if e3, then really g5 would almost be trapping that bishop. So the bishop actually snaps off that knight here for white to play this quick e4, which visually looks impressive at the moment. White's position looks impressive with these pawns and this quick e4, but black does have this potentially dangerous dark square bishop now. He takes on e4 and plays bishop b4. Okay, and now c5 is played, seemingly giving white a nice d6 square and a lock-in of this bishop. But now knight f6, and black is immediately hitting d4 here, and challenging this knight. The queen comes and protects that d4 pawn. Black takes on e4, and here actually, and even earlier, there might have been the liberating move e5 at black's disposal. Aronian chooses king h8 here, but actually here e5 might be playable. For example, takes, and there's just pressure here for the pawn, and c5 is vulnerable. This is a good position for black. Black might be even slightly better. White's position is a bit airy, but some weaknesses. Black's control of d2 is actually significant here, and this c5. So actually, even earlier though, the liberating break in this position, even here before knight f6, here e5, and we have a similar kind of, black has dynamic play here with this e5 move. Even if he gives up c6, this is a tactical variation just looked at earlier, and black's okay here. So it seems e5, unfortunately for white, is a dangerous resource available to black in many of these echo variations. But king h8 has another intention. Okay, the king's coming off this sensitive diagonal. So actually e5, d5, and now we see the other quite amazing idea here. A simple move in this position, you'd think maybe c takes d5 is a simple move, and this is okay for black, because if you look at the bishops, they're liberated, and black seems to be doing fairly okay. If white does this, then black can take that pawn. This is a pawn sack engine line. For some reason, it shows that white's position can't be that cheerful here, with black having the bishop pair. Why on earth would queen d6 be suggested here? Funny enough, it is. If we look at like knight c3, you just take on c5 here. But what sensible move does white have here? Knight d2, you play rook d8, and you emphasize that d2 control. So this position is actually uncomfortable for white, believe it or not. So anyway, in the game though, CD wasn't chosen, even though it seems quite attractive. A rather astonishing move instead of CD. I wonder if you can guess it if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. The concept is impressive. It's attacking. It's in my kind of style actually. I like to think I have an attacking style, and this very attacking move f5, going into a kind of virtual gambit variation where black has the bishop pair and potential for f4 and e4 being a menace. So we see after d takes c6, what is the purpose of this gambit? Now shutting down that bishop, so immediately threatening now to take without any recapture from the bishop, shutting it down. C takes b7. Okay, white's won a pawn. What is this? White now plays this move, which seems good in principle to push that pawn, but remember his pieces are locked down here. This knight and this bishop are getting shut out of the game. Bishop a6, and look at black's bishops on these diagonals. They're quite menacing here. Not that one, this one. They're quite menacing here. Queen b3, rook c8, and look at this like d file. Bishop d3 might be a useful resource. This c pawn is a bit vulnerable. Knight c3 is played here, just giving back the c pawn. But what else does white do in this position? He can't easily develop his knight, and his rook's kind of stranded in. So in fact, Levon's damaged the quality of quite a few of white's pieces in this position. This bishop, this knight, and this rook are really struggling to play a role in this game. Did white already go wrong? I think technically there might have been something going on for white here technically. c6 is given as a good move. Now here actually, instead of that queen retreat, maybe c7 is given as a reasonable move, but it must be some high precision idea. Queen c6 might be it. If you just look at black's pieces and look at white's pieces though, and e3 looks scary. It just looks like you know, why is black so active here with his bishop pair, etc.? It looks like a good gambit position from the Slav. So rook c8, so giving back that pawn. Okay, so 5 pawns each, but black now plays bishop c5, which looks as though f2 is vulnerable now, and this d5 knight is potentially a bit loose. Bishop f1, challenging the light square bishop, and now black just plays actually f4, and you might think, hold on, what is this? What about bishop takes a6 and this? Aren't these guys loose? f4. Okay, I think the best an engine can come up with to parry white's attack is actually to sacrifice the exchange here with rook takes c5 and knight takes f4, believe it or not. Now if we look at some other basic continuations after f4, so let's have a look at bishop takes a6. Why would this be a disaster? fg, just not recapturing, just going for this f2. What does white do here? Say he takes like this, bishop takes f2, say king g2, and now the rook can actually take here safely, so the check and taking there is recapturing. That's got a big advantage. So it's as simple as that. fg, if this bishop dares move back, then it'll be total devastation surely. Rook f3 seems incisive from an engine point of view here, attacking the queen, undermining a bit d5. If the queen comes off d5, there's going to be trouble. If queen c4, there's bishop f2 surely to win the queen, or even stronger, queen h4 is a forced mate. That's even worse. Okay, so it's really dangerous, this f4. Aronian's already starting to prove f4 has such venom here. So white takes on f4 here, and now spot the tactic black has and plays. So with this pinned, it seems this is awkward, but all the problems are solved with this next move. If I give you 10 seconds starting from now, what does black play here? Okay, bishop takes f2 check. It's all got to run with check. Potentially, by the way, this knight has also got knight g6 if this rook wasn't on g6. So in this position, white plays king h1. Now on king takes f2, there's a fun continuation here. Can you spot the fun continuation? I'll just show you it actually. If it's rook takes f4 check, with the idea of the queen coming to d2, and he's ruling out, if in this variation, knight g6. So winning that rook on c1 is much better for black here. And the huge pin on it's going to win more material potentially here. This is crushing white, and there's e3s and all that. It's just all over this position here. You might think the check is just harmless. Queen a3. Let's just give queen a3 as an idea. Takes, say, bishop b7, bishop c8. Bishop b7 has got e3 as the idea, I think. Just e3 here, and then e2. This pawn's a menace, so it's absolute devastation there in that variation. So that's why it's probably not a good idea to take that bishop. So king h1. Okay, equal on pawns at the moment, but now of course black's got this menacing pawn still and the bishop pair. He plays rook b6, kicking the queen, gaining a tempo. Queen c2, and now e3, opening up this diagonal as well as threatening potentially e2 in some variations. Bishop g2 is played. As an idea of the dangers, I put in a token move to show the dangers in this position if bishop g2 isn't played. Say a token move like rook ab1, just to show the dangers. Rook takes f4, check. This is quite crushing for white, this kind of use of the diagonals. Queen f3, and it's all over here. Queen e2, queen h1. So anyway, so putting that bishop to contest that diagonal. Now queen e8 is a nifty move because it's supporting e2 now. That's focal point on e2, so e2 is a dangerous pawn. White plays queen c5, and now Levon doesn't want to move this rook because potentially there's a knight g6. If, for example, well, if the disaster, well, not rook b7 is not possible, but I suspect a move like rook b8 is falling in to something horrible here. If he simply retreated this rook, let's just check this position. Queen takes f8 might be a horrible resource, turning the tables a bit. It's a forcing resource anyway, so rook c5, okay. It's still dangerous for white, but technically white, in theory, might be doing okay. So this queen takes f8 continuation is actually completely avoided by Levon protecting the rook with rook f6. He's got c8 covered with the bishop, so there's no exchange of queens for white. So there's still this threat of e2. After rook c2, I think this might be a bit of a howler, this move, rook c2, because it means e2, e1 is more effective. Possibly it was designed, well, an immediate e2 here. There's queen takes f2, so black can't be hasty here. So e2, I assume queen takes f2. Okay, even here though, there's a resource to carry on for black. But let's just go on this in this position. Is this such a howler? Well, it seems to give black a huge advantage from an engine point of view because of this resource g5. So we've got to ask about the possibility of knight e2. Why would knight e2 fail here just to blockade the pawn? I'm just wondering about bishop d3. Looks fairly nasty to dislodge the protection on e2. Is bishop d3 a move here? Yes, bishop d3 looks like a crushing move in this position. So queen c8, you can just take here, and again with this blockader challenged, it's difficult. Okay, so in the game actually, after g5, knight d5 is played, and now e2 anyway, and now attacking the queen with the bishop, of course, as well as threatening e1. It's looking nasty, this pawn. White takes on a5, which does kind of guard e1. It's not just munching a pawn. But e1 is played anyway. It is winning material. Black is going up a bishop here. In this scenario, he's a bishop up. After all these exchanges, a bishop up for 2 pawns. White decides to exchange off rooks here with rook c6. Black hasn't got much choice unless he wants to lose bishop and pawn. He takes that, and it's a bishop down. It doesn't look too hard now. White is trying to swap off pawns, but he can't get rid of this pawn. If black retains this pawn, winning chances are guaranteed. So these pawns are about to be mopped up. White played strange bishop b7. Black can easily win now bishop b7. With this move, white resigned. So the Netherlands match score against Armenia, they lost 1-3 against Armenia. Armenia won 3-1, with Levon Aronian winning this one and Akopian winning on board 3 against Ivan Sokolov. So it just shows the dynamism that the Slav with a vengeance can get a gambit from it, can get f5, e4, f4 from the Slav. The rock solid fortification of the centre. as a prelude to really, really exciting, dynamic stuff. So they say about an opening matching one style, but you know, Aronian's a wolf in sheep's clothing, where the sheep's clothing is the Slav, and he becomes a wolf here. Look at the way he played this. After, once he got the bishop pair, he played a highly aggressive, not just e5, he wasn't just content with the liberating e5, which occurs in multiple echo variations. You know, at move 15 he could have played e5. At move 17 he could have played e5. But he plays it with king h8 as the preparation, and to continue with f5, making it into a gambit where he has the bishop pair, and he has this potential just to make use of this rook and make use of this bishop later, as it turned out. Things are descending on white's king here. Even though white's got that advanced pawn, white has trouble developing pieces, and he gives back that pawn. And now this f4, it's just the attack's crashing through. Not only the attack, but this very dangerous e pawn is passed here, and it's supported. So white's got his resources as well, tactical resources up his sleeve. But Levon's careful not just to routinely, you know, move the rook back here. So he cuts out white's resources, and g5. Mentioned this as a theoretical possibility of h6 supporting g5s later at the right moment. But here, knight e2 doesn't seem an effective blockade because of bishop d3, and he's just a bishop up basically in this continuation. In this position, you might think, well, why did white simplify with rook c6? If rook c1, how would black have made progress here? I mean, it seems black's hugely better here, but let's give an example. In this position, there's a tactic rook takes b2, for example. Yeah, with this nifty stuff going on here, this embarrassment of, I mean, this would be it's just the bishop up basically. This is not a position to write home about for white. The pawns are just not enough. So okay, but yeah, it's wolf in sheep's clothing style. This, I believe, you know, starting solid, then getting a trump card like the bishop pair, then, you know, gambit time, pass pawn time, king safety time. It all turned really bad for white. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.